Stop chasing love from your children before it's too late. Carl Jung's 9 Rules. Children begin by loving their parents. As they grow older, they judge them. Sometimes they forgive them. Oscar Wilde. This timeless truth reminds us that love within families is not guaranteed, and often it must be nurtured with wisdom rather than chased with desperation. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore Carl Jung's 9 rules to help parents stop running after their children's affection and instead cultivate respect, dignity, and deeper connection. As you listen, I invite you to reflect. Have you ever felt the need to beg for love from those you gave everything to? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your experience may be the light someone else needs on their own journey of healing. 1. The pain of parents who beg for love. Many parents carry a silent grief, a sorrow that rarely finds words, but lingers in their hearts like a shadow. They give everything: time, energy, sacrifice, yet feel invisible in the eyes of their own children. Behind their gentle smiles often hides exhaustion. Behind their prolonged silences echoes disappointment. And behind repeated apologies lies a desperate attempt to hold on to a bond that seems to slip further away. This silent suffering comes when love turns into begging, when the very people who once gave life feel reduced to pleading for recognition. Carl Jung warned against this collapse of dignity, reminding us that love is not a currency to be demanded, nor a prize to be won. Love must flow freely, like water from a spring, or else it ceases to nourish both giver and receiver. The tragedy is not only emotional, but spiritual, because when parents beg for affection, they unconsciously trade away their inner authority. They fall into the illusion that their worth depends on their children's approval, forgetting that their value lies within. Spirituality teaches us that true love mirrors the rhythm of nature. The sun does not beg the earth to receive its light. The tree does not plead with its fruit to grow, and the ocean does not bargain with the shore to return its waves. In the same way, parents must give love as an offering, not as a demand, trusting that what they give fulfills its purpose even when it is not immediately returned. To beg is to shrink the soul, but to give with dignity is to honor the sacredness of the bond and the sacredness of the self. In the modern world, this lesson becomes even more pressing. Children are often pulled into a maze of distractions: social media, peer influence, cultural pressures that leave little room for deep reflection. Parents, anxious to keep their place in their children's lives, sometimes attempt to buy back affection with gifts, sacrifices, or endless concessions. Yet, this kind of pursuit only deepens the void, because authentic connection cannot be purchased. It is born from respect and presence. Here lies the wisdom of spirituality and psychology combined. Love thrives not in desperation, but in freedom, not in clinging, but in authenticity. By refusing to beg, parents model the very self-respect they long to see in their children, planting seeds of awareness that may only bloom later, but will bloom nonetheless. Jung's insight reveals that the soul of a parent must remain whole if it is to guide effectively. If a child's love feels distant or conditional, the response is not to chase after it, but to embody quiet strength, to remain a mirror of resilience. Spiritual awakening begins when parents recognize that dignity is not optional, it is essential. By standing firm in love without surrendering to humiliation, they teach their children, often unconsciously, what it means to respect others and themselves. A parent's presence, rooted in self-worth, speaks more powerfully than 1,000 pleas. Over time, children come to recognize and honor this presence, not out of guilt or pity, but out of a deeper awareness of the sacred bond that endures beneath every misunderstanding and every silence. Thus, the hidden message within this pain is not to give up on love, but to transform the way it is expressed. Parents who embrace their own dignity while continuing to love without begging become living examples of unconditional strength. They remind their children, even if it takes years to be understood, that true love never demands repayment. Instead, it waits patiently, radiates quietly, and endures faithfully. This is the path of spirituality, where suffering is transmuted into wisdom and silent pain becomes the soil from which respect and reconciliation can grow. In this way, what once felt like a loss becomes a profound act of teaching, and what once felt like rejection becomes the doorway to a higher form of love, one that heals, restores, and honors both parent and child. Have you ever felt the silent pain of giving everything to your children, yet feeling unseen? If you have, share your story in the comments so others can learn from your journey. If not, write, "I choose dignity," to remind yourself and others that love should never be begged for. 2. Do not justify the unjustifiable. Do not justify the unjustifiable, because when parents excuse absence, indifference, or rudeness, they are not protecting their children. They are enabling their immaturity. Denial may numb the wound for a moment, but it never heals it. When you convince yourself that a crumb of affection is a feast, you quietly erode your own dignity. And worse, you teach your child that neglect and disregard are acceptable forms of love. Carl Jung observed that what is tolerated in silence becomes embedded in the unconscious, shaping the next generation's habits and relationships. If a child learns that their coldness or disrespect will always be excused, they grow into adults who believe that immaturity is enough, that love does not require responsibility, and that bonds can be one-sided without consequence. This is not merely about parenting. It is about spirituality and spiritual development, because the way we define love at home becomes the foundation of how the soul understands connection. To excuse harmful behavior under the name of love is to teach your child that love and disrespect can coexist, a distortion that leads them further from their true self. Real spirituality does not ask you to pretend your pain is invisible. It asks you to stand in the truth, even when it hurts, and to call forth growth from that truth. When you say, "This hurts and it matters," you are not pushing your child away. You are inviting them to awaken, to recognize that real love is built on respect, presence, and responsibility. Yet so many parents tell themselves, "At least my child still calls," or "At least they showed up for a moment." These crumbs, when treated as abundance, teach children to offer the minimum and believe it is enough. But your soul knows the difference between scraps and true nourishment. As Jung warned, the shadow thrives when ignored. By justifying your child's shadow behaviors, you allow the shadow to grow, both in them and in yourself. You remain trapped in quiet suffering, while they remain trapped in arrested development. Spiritual development requires courage, the courage to stop excusing, to stop rationalizing, and to start honoring your worth. When you refuse to justify the unjustifiable, you do not create distance. You create clarity. You show your child that love is sacred, that it requires reciprocity, and that maturity is the true measure of closeness. This stance is not about punishment. It is about guidance. It is about teaching them that relationships are not games of power or entitlement, but holy spaces where truth, care, and responsibility must coexist. Your worth as a parent is not proven by how much neglect you can endure, but by how bravely you embody the truth that love requires respect. When you stop accepting crumbs, you break the cycle of scarcity and call forth a higher law of love. You teach your child not just how to love you, but how to love others, how to honor themselves, and how to live with integrity. And in doing so, you give them a spiritual inheritance far greater than money or comfort. You give them wisdom, accountability, and the strength to choose authenticity over illusion. Comment below. I will no longer justify the unjustifiable. If you are ready to honor yourself and live with true spiritual wisdom. 3. You cannot heal their wounds. Children often carry hidden wounds, and in their pain, they may project anger, resentment, or silence onto their parents. This projection is not always a sign that you have failed. It is often their own unconscious wrestling with shadows you cannot touch. Carl Jung, with his profound intelligence and spiritual wisdom, reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your children's struggles, no matter how much you love them, are not always yours to solve. You may give them everything, your time, your energy, your sacrifices, and still find that their wounds remain. Some battles are theirs alone, and true love means honoring that boundary. To love in this way requires the courage to step back, even when every instinct tells you to protect. It is the discipline of letting go, the wisdom to allow your children to stumble, fall, and rise again. Just as a butterfly must struggle out of its cocoon to strengthen its wings, your children must walk through their own storms to discover their inner strength. Trying to rescue them at every turn may soothe your fear, but it denies them the very growth that suffering can bring. Jung understood that transformation only comes through direct confrontation with one's own truth. Your role is not to heal every wound, but to model wholeness, to stand steady in your dignity while trusting that their soul knows its own path. This does not mean withdrawing love. It means showing love in its highest form, a love that is unconditional yet sovereign, present yet not desperate. Children are educated by what the grown-up is and not by his talk, Jung wrote. And this truth speaks louder than words. When your children see that you do not beg for their affection, but instead carry yourself with quiet strength and self-respect, they learn that love is not about neediness, but about authenticity. They begin to understand that true connection cannot be forced or chased. It must flow naturally from the soul. You cannot erase their pain, but you can refuse to abandon yourself in trying. You cannot fix every wound, but you can embody resilience, showing them that life does not end in suffering, but can be transformed through it. That is the essence of spiritual wisdom, knowing when to give, when to release, and when to trust the unseen intelligence of the journey. To stop chasing love is not to stop loving. It is to love in a way that honors both your dignity and their destiny. By allowing them the space to grow, you affirm your own wholeness, and in time, they may come to recognize that your quiet strength was the greatest gift you ever offered. 4. Boundaries are essential. Unconditional love is often mistaken as permission to accept everything. But when love loses its boundaries, it stops being love and turns into submission, exhaustion, and imbalance. Boundaries do not destroy love. They protect it, refine it, and give it dignity. To say, "I love you, but I will not let you hurt me," is not rejection, but the highest expression of respect for both yourself and the other person. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that the soul seeks balance, and spirituality teaches that true love cannot exist where one person erases themselves entirely. When we set boundaries, we transform love from dependency into mutual recognition, ensuring it becomes a source of growth rather than a wound of sacrifice. Just as a river flows with life-giving force only because its banks hold it in place, love too requires structure to sustain its beauty and power. Without boundaries, it overflows into chaos, destroying instead of nourishing. In modern relationships, especially between parents and children, this truth is often overlooked. Parents who give endlessly, without limit, in the hope of securing affection, often teach entitlement instead of gratitude, showing their children that respect is optional and love is one-sided. Spiritual awakening reveals that when you set limits, you teach responsibility, self-awareness, and honor. By saying no with love, you show that connection thrives on balance, not on silent suffering. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out, but bridges that invite others to meet you in the sacred space of respect and authenticity. In daily life, they ensure that your love remains steady, like a candle in a lantern, glowing without burning itself out. They remind others that while your love is abundant, it is not unconditional in the sense of tolerating harm. This is not coldness, but higher compassion, the kind of wisdom that challenges both you and those you love to rise above selfishness into deeper connection. As the sacred teaching says, love your neighbor as yourself. And boundaries are how you live this truth. Loving without losing yourself, giving without erasing your dignity, and creating relationships that honor both spirit and soul. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you won't miss any valuable wisdom like this. Type in the comments, "I choose to set healthy boundaries in love," to affirm this truth in your life. 5. Rediscover your own life. Parents often give everything they have to their children, sacrificing dreams, passions, and even their own identity along the way. This deep devotion is a form of love. But Carl Jung reminds us that love for others should never come at the cost of forgetting ourselves. He described the second half of life as a sacred turning point, a season when we must return to our own essence, nurture the soul, and live authentically beyond the role of parent. Too often, parents awaken to find their children grown and gone while they remain behind, standing in the shadow of old sacrifices that no longer define them. This is why spirituality and spiritual development become essential, because they help us remember that our worth is not confined to what we provide for others, but also rooted in how we care for our inner life. Stepping back into your own life is not selfish. It is an act of wisdom. When you abandon your own growth, you unintentionally teach your children that love means self-erasure, and this only creates cycles of silence and resentment. By reclaiming your passions, and investing in your own journey, you reveal a deeper truth. Love includes self-respect, self-expression, and self-discovery. Your children need to see the beauty of a parent who evolves, who lives fully, and who has the courage to walk their own path. In today's world, filled with endless demands, work pressure, and constant digital comparison, this lesson is more urgent than ever. Without it, you risk pouring from an empty cup, but with it, you offer your children the living example of someone who gives from a place of wholeness. Every dream you silenced still waits within you. Perhaps you once loved music, writing, or traveling, but convinced yourself those joys no longer mattered. Jung believed those unlived parts of the soul remain in the unconscious, urging us to return to them. The second half of life is not about abandoning your responsibilities. It is about retrieving these forgotten pieces and weaving them into your present, so that your giving is no longer fueled by depletion, but by abundance. This is what true spiritual development looks like: an integration of responsibilities with renewed meaning, where you honor both your family and your soul. The path begins with simple steps. Carve out quiet moments to reflect. Write about who you were before becoming a parent. Reconnect with forgotten passions, or explore new ones that stir your curiosity. Choose to spend time with those who encourage growth, and allow yourself to step into opportunities that once felt beyond reach. Spirituality teaches that life is never static. It is always unfolding, always calling us to awaken to more. When you embrace this truth, you no longer live only for yesterday's sacrifices. You begin to live for tomorrow's possibilities with grace and strength. To rediscover your own life is to reclaim your dignity, your vitality, and your freedom. Parenthood is a sacred calling, but it is not the full measure of who you are. Your soul still longs for expression. Your heart still seeks joy, and your spirit still craves meaning. By answering that call, you not only honor yourself, but also give your children an inheritance far greater than material sacrifices. You give them the vision of what it means to live authentically, to grow continually, and to love without losing oneself. This balance between giving and being, between love for others and love for yourself, is the essence of spirituality, the foundation of spiritual development, and the key to walking into the rest of your life whole and awake. Don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom on rediscovering your own life and living with the spiritual intelligence Carl Jung taught us. 6. Break the myth of eternal debt. Many parents carry the hidden belief that because they gave life, sacrificed, and poured out love, their children must forever repay them with loyalty, obedience, or gratitude. But Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that love is not a contract and not a debt to be collected. The moment it is turned into repayment, it becomes heavy, breeding guilt in the child and quiet resentment in the parent, because true love must remain a gift. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself, wrote Khalil Gibran, reminding us that children belong to life, not to possession or obligation. And when you release them from debt, you also free yourself from silent chains. When love is tied to repayment, it loses its purity and power. Instead of growing closer, a child may feel burdened by invisible expectations, carrying the weight of never being enough, which only creates distance. Jung, with his deep intelligence and sensitivity to the soul, understood that relationships bound by guilt cannot flourish. For the parent who constantly demands affection is no longer the root that nourishes, but the branch that clings. And when branches cling too tightly, they eventually break. Love that turns into leverage is not love, but manipulation. And sacrifice that is weaponized no longer carries sacred value. To break the myth of eternal debt requires courage, because it asks parents to let go of demands and stand in dignity instead of in need. When you remind yourself, "My children owe me nothing," you elevate your sacrifices to something noble and free, returning love to its highest vibration, unconditional, flowing, and whole. Dennis Waitley once said, "The greatest gift you can give your children is roots of responsibility and wings of independence." And this wisdom captures the essence of parenthood. By releasing the false debt, you give them the root of stability and the wings of freedom, rather than binding them with guilt. This shift also restores your own self-respect. No longer do you see yourself as someone begging for affection or measuring worth by your child's response. Instead, you embody Carl Jung's intelligence and spiritual wisdom. Love that does not demand becomes a radiant source, not a desperate seeker. When your children sense you no longer chase their validation, they often draw closer, because love flows back most powerfully when it is not coerced. Jung reminded us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And when you fully accept yourself, you stop seeking worth in your child's reflection and begin to live in dignity. Children owe their parents nothing. Love is never a loan to be repaid, but a gift to be cherished. And when you live by this truth, you dissolve resentment, remove the burden of guilt, and restore love to its natural place, offered freely, without chains, without demand, and without end. 7. Transform pain into growth. Pain is often the silent teacher of the soul, and Carl Jung wisely said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain, for it is through struggle that the human spirit awakens." Emotional distance can feel like mourning someone who is still alive, especially when you carry the quiet ache of being unseen or unacknowledged by those you love. Yet within that very emptiness lies the seed of transformation, because suffering, when faced with courage, is not a punishment, but a sacred invitation to rise. In silence, you can find clarity. In wounds, you can discover strength. And in sorrow, you can awaken to a deeper form of spirituality that turns loss into wisdom. When you stop resisting pain and begin to meet it with awareness, you transform it from an enemy into a teacher. Each tear becomes a mark of resilience. Each disappointment shapes a stronger vision of life. And each silence becomes a space where truth speaks more loudly than words. Just as fire tempers iron, the struggles you endure temper your spirit, creating depth, durability, and dignity. Spiritual awakening comes not when you escape from your wounds, but when you allow them to refine you, revealing that you are stronger than the story of your suffering. Rather than begging for love or clinging to validation, you step back into your own power, seeing pain not as a thief, but as a sculptor, shaping you into someone unbreakable. In the noise of modern life, most people bury their pain under distractions, work, relationships, or endless scrolling, but these only deepen the wound. If instead you pause and truly sit with your discomfort, you discover that beneath the ache lies clarity and truth. Jung reminded us, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. And in that stillness, you realize that pain is the compass pointing you back to authenticity. Every wound, whether it comes from rejection, distance, or unspoken regret, carries within it the power to either harden you or awaken you. When you choose courage, the wound becomes wisdom, teaching you compassion, patience, and the ability to love yourself more deeply. This is the essence of spirituality, to turn what once broke you into the very foundation of your strength. Mourning becomes meaning, silence becomes guidance, and despair becomes renewal. By meeting suffering with awareness, you transform it into growth. You transform distance into dignity, and you transform sorrow into spiritual wisdom. In this way, pain ceases to be a shadow in your life and instead becomes the very light that reveals who you are becoming. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment below. Not sure what to say? Just type, "I rise," so I know you stayed until the end and are ready to transform pain into growth. 8. Be an example of dignity and independence. To live as an example of dignity and independence is the greatest inheritance you can give your children, because it teaches without words and remains long after temporary conflicts fade. Carl Jung once said that true influence is not found in chasing love or recognition, but in embodying inner steadiness. And this wisdom still resonates today. Parents who cling to desperation, who beg for affection or validation, often find that their children respond with resistance or resentment, for love cannot be forced into existence. Yet when you choose calm strength over despair, you radiate a presence that leaves a lasting imprint on the soul of your child, even if they do not acknowledge it in the moment. This is the essence of spirituality and spiritual development. To stand firm in your truth, to embody the qualities you hope to pass on, and to understand that the energy you carry speaks louder than any demand. When children withdraw, disrespect, or fail to notice your sacrifices, the temptation is to plead for their attention, but such pleas erode your power and diminish your dignity. A parent who lives with quiet independence shows their children that self-worth is not dependent on external approval, but is rooted in inner strength. In this way, you are not only guiding them, but also protecting your own soul from the cycle of disappointment. Children may project their shadows, their frustrations, and their unresolved pain onto you. Yet your ability to remain steady becomes a lesson in resilience. Jung recognized that the parent who refuses to collapse under the weight of rejection and instead holds steady in calm dignity teaches a deeper truth about love than any words could express. Modern life makes this even more urgent, for families today are fractured by distractions, distance, and generational gaps that often leave parents feeling unseen. It is easy to believe that chasing after love will close the gap, but desperation only widens it. Your strength lies in patience, in peace, and in quiet authority. A parent who lives with dignity, who refuses to let their value depend on whether or not their children notice them, becomes a silent but powerful guide. Even if your children do not say it now, even if they turn away, one day they will remember that you stood tall, not broken, and that memory will become a compass for their own journey. The truth is simple. Do not beg for love. Embody it. Do not demand respect. Live it. By carrying yourself with calm dignity, you shine a steady light that no rejection can extinguish. This is the gift of spiritual development. You become a living example of strength, independence, and unwavering love, teaching not by control, but by presence. And though your children may forget your words, they will never forget the energy of calm steadiness you carried, because that becomes their deepest inheritance. To honor your path of dignity and independence, make your stand today. Comment below, "I rise with dignity," to affirm your journey and inspire others to embrace their own strength. 9. Leave space for love to return. Love cannot be demanded or forced, because the very act of chasing it drives it away. Carl Jung, with his intelligence and spiritual wisdom, reminds us that reconciliation, if it comes, must come freely, not out of guilt or pressure. The more you cling, the more you suffocate the bond you wish to preserve. And children especially can sense when affection is mixed with expectation or hidden demands. To love in truth means to release control, to let go of the urge to beg for what must be freely given, and to stand with dignity in your own authenticity. True love is not an obligation that children owe. It is a gift that flows only when the heart chooses. If you live with constant demands for recognition or affection, disappointment will follow, because love that is forced loses its essence. Instead, focus on cultivating your own peace, your own strength, and your own wholeness. In that stillness, you create a sacred space where love might return in honesty, and even if it does not, peace itself will remain as your companion. Jung's spiritual wisdom shows that when you stop grasping, you give love the air to breathe and the freedom to return in its pure form. This is not surrendering to despair, but trusting the natural rhythm of life. Just as seasons shift without force, relationships transform in their own timing. Children may wander, carry resentment, or seek distance, but when you release the chase, you respect their journey while honoring your own. Love may change shape, becoming respect, gratitude, or a quiet acknowledgement that arises long after the storms have passed. As Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even if you have not known them before." For love, like the seasons, cannot be rushed, but must be allowed to unfold. To stop chasing love is to stand in truth, creating a space where reconciliation may return in authenticity, or where peace will sustain you even if it does not. If love comes back, it will be genuine, born of freedom and authenticity. If it does not, you will have gained something equally valuable: peace, the inner strength that no one can take away. Peace is not dependent on the love of another. It is the quiet victory of a soul that has chosen dignity over desperation. At the end of the day, the message remains clear. You are not meant to beg for love that should flow naturally. By honoring yourself and respecting the boundaries of the heart, you create a space where authentic connection can grow. Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom. If this video spoke to you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. Until next time, may you continue to walk in wisdom, strength, and love. If quantum manifestation feels uncomfortable, you're closer than you think. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And perhaps that's the hidden truth of manifestation. When the process feels uncomfortable, it often means you are breaking free from the old self and stepping closer to the life you've been calling in. Discomfort isn't failure. It's the sign that transformation is alive within you. As you listen today, I encourage you to ask yourself, how can you embrace this temporary unease and allow it to guide you toward growth and happiness? Share your reflections in the comments below. I'd love to hear how these principles resonate in your own journey. 1. Discomfort is a sign of transition, not failure. That heavy, uneasy feeling you sense when you declare a new reality is not a mistake, but a transition. You stand between who you have always been and who you are becoming. And this in-between space feels unsettling because it disrupts the identity your mind and body have rehearsed for years. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that inner resistance is not punishment, but evidence that transformation has begun. Your nervous system has memorized fear, doubt, and stress as safe because they are familiar. Neuroscience shows that your body and brain are addicted to these emotional feedback loops. And when you affirm a higher truth like, "I am abundant," or "I am free," you interrupt that old program. The body protests and urges you to return to what feels normal. But here, intelligence and spiritual wisdom are required. The unease you feel is proof that the old identity is dissolving while the new one is being born. It is like moving into a new home. Packing, lifting, and the chaos of transition never feel comfortable. Yet those moments are necessary to arrive in a better space. If you judge too quickly, you mistake progress for failure. As the saying goes, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Manifestation brings that cave of discomfort, but inside it lies the treasure of your expanded life. Jung also warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you manifest, you stir the unconscious, expose patterns, and trigger hidden fears. This does not mean the universe has turned against you. It means life is intelligently rearranging itself to create space for your new identity. What feels heavy is the trembling of the old self as the new self takes root. Discomfort in manifestation is not a wall, but a bridge. Each step you take in that unease carries you closer to alignment with the reality you are calling in. Growth has never been comfortable, yet it is always purposeful. Rumi wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your soul, even if the winter is long. Spring will surely come. The heaviness you carry is the winter before your blooming. The more you move toward your new life, the more the old one will resist. But that resistance is the surest sign you are closer than you think." If you believe that discomfort is not failure, but the beginning of transformation, comment below, "I embrace the transition." Your words affirm your readiness to step into the flow of spiritual awakening and abundance. 2. Body resists new chemistry. When you decide to transform your life, the first sensations are rarely ease and freedom. Instead, they are heaviness, doubt, and unease, as though the universe itself is resisting you. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain," and neuroscience confirms this. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that your nervous system is chemically addicted to the emotions you have practiced for years: fear, stress, worry, frustration. So when you choose a new identity and declare new truths, such as, "I am abundant," or "I am free," your body instinctively resists. The cells fight against the unfamiliar chemistry, mistaking growth for danger. But this resistance is not a failure. It is a signal that you are disrupting the old programming. And in spirituality, this resistance is a sacred sign that a spiritual awakening has already begun. Imagine someone who has lived in darkness for decades finally stepping into sunlight. The brightness burns their eyes, and their instinct is to retreat. Yet the pain of the light is proof that they are closer to life than ever before. In the same way, when manifestation feels uncomfortable, when uncertainty and doubt rise, it is because you are moving out of the shadows of the familiar and into the brilliance of a new reality. Jung described this journey as individuation, the process of becoming your true self beyond conditioning and the collective unconscious. In modern life, you experience this whenever you try to break toxic habits, start a new career, or set healthy boundaries. Your body and mind scream for the old comfort zone, but what feels wrong is simply what feels unfamiliar. And what feels unfamiliar is often the very doorway into growth. Discomfort is not the enemy, but the compass pointing to transformation. The anxiety and restlessness you feel are evidence of the nervous system rewiring itself, building a new identity that aligns with the vision of your higher self. Just as muscles must tear slightly to grow stronger, your psyche must stretch beyond the known before it stabilizes in a higher vibration. This is why Jung reminded us, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Awakening is not a smooth path. It is a shedding of layers, a burning away of illusions, and a rebirth of who you truly are. The heaviness that rises as you step into manifestation is not a mistake. It is your old chemistry dissolving so that your biology can rise into possibility. Your body is not betraying you. It is simply catching up to the intelligence of your spirit. In daily life, this may look like fear as you pursue your calling, nervousness when you step into love, or uncertainty when you chase financial freedom. The discomfort is not a sign to stop, but a sign you are breaking through. Just as a seed must push through heavy soil to meet the light. Every wave of doubt, every moment of unease is proof that the old identity is fading and the new one is being born. What once felt impossible becomes natural once you persist through the discomfort. Because this is the path of spirituality and spiritual awakening, not the path of comfort, but the fire that forges you into your higher self. Your body may resist the new chemistry of change, but that resistance is proof you're moving closer to transformation. If you're ready to embrace this journey, comment below, "I will transform," to show your commitment. 3. Quantum metaphor. Superposition and the gap. Like an electron in superposition, your reality does not exist in only one form, but in many possibilities waiting to collapse into shape. And in that mysterious space between the old and the new, your desired life already exists alongside what you are leaving behind. The invisible gap may appear empty, but in truth, it is rich and fertile, like soil holding a seed that has not yet broken the surface. Beneath that silence, roots are forming, connections are weaving, and energy is aligning. Carl Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And in this unseen stage, your unconscious is being reshaped so that fate itself can take a new form. The discomfort you feel here, the heaviness, the doubt, the restlessness is not a sign of failure, but the trembling of a system that has lived too long in old patterns. Your nervous system has rehearsed fear, stress, and scarcity for years, and when you begin to move toward freedom and abundance, it resists. Just as muscles ache when stretched beyond their comfort zone, the spirit also protests when asked to carry a new frequency. This resistance is proof that transformation is underway. Spirituality teaches that every unraveling is the beginning of a rebirth, and spiritual development demands that you learn to walk through this fire without running back to what feels safe. What makes this stage difficult is our craving for visible results. We are taught to measure progress by what we can see and touch, and so when nothing appears to change, we assume nothing is working. Yet a farmer never digs up a seed each day to check if it is growing. He trusts the soil, the water, and the unseen process of life. In the same way, the gap between desire and manifestation is not barren but sacred, a womb where creation is nurtured in silence. Your intentions are converging with universal intelligence. Your emotions are learning new rhythms, and your inner self is becoming strong enough to carry the future you are calling in. The truth is that the gap itself is the work. It is not punishment, it is preparation. When you stand in this space and refuse to give up, you show the universe that you are ready to hold the reality you are asking for. Each moment of discomfort becomes proof that the old self is dissolving and the new self is being born. If you can remain faithful here, nurturing your thoughts, protecting your energy, and staying committed to your vision, the collapse will come. The invisible will become visible. The unseen will become seen. And your reality will align with what your soul already knows is possible. 4. Coherence, not just thought, collapses reality. Thought by itself is never enough to bend reality, because the quantum field does not respond to weak signals of wishful thinking, but to the frequency of coherence where your entire being speaks in unison. Carl Jung's reminder that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, points us toward the truth that transformation happens only when thought, feeling, and nervous system come into alignment. A scattered mind whispers into the void, but a coherent heart and brain generate an electromagnetic broadcast so powerful that the field cannot help but respond. When you think, I am free, or I am abundant, and at the same time, allow your body to feel the freedom, the gratitude, and the abundance as if it already exists, you are no longer asking what you are declaring, and the universe rearranges itself around that clear command. The discomfort that often rises when you begin this process is not a sign of failure, but of breakthrough. Your nervous system has rehearsed the chemistry of stress, fear, and doubt for years, and when you introduce a new frequency, the old patterns resist. You feel uneasy, not because you are misaligned, but because you are pulling your energy away from the familiar past and into the unknown future. Spiritual wisdom teaches that this is the point where most people turn back, mistaking resistance for a warning. But in truth, it is confirmation that the old self is losing its grip. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that coherence between brain and heart is measurable, producing waves of harmony that signal the quantum field with precision, collapsing possibilities into tangible experiences. The mind may design the blueprint of your new life, but the heart is the current that brings it to life, and only together can they build the structure of destiny. Intelligent spiritual wisdom shows us that coherence is the bridge between intention and manifestation, the invisible connection between the unseen energy and the reality we step into. This is why prayers, meditations, and rituals across traditions carry power not from words alone, but from the alignment of thought and emotion, tuning the body into an instrument of creation. Carl Jung also observed that what you resist not only persists, but grows, reminding us that pushing against discomfort strengthens it, while meeting it with awareness transforms it into progress. To manifest is not to beg, but to embody. It is to breathe as though the future is now, to let your heart and brain generate a unified rhythm, and to trust that the signal you send is already shaping events around you. Albert Einstein's insight that everything is energy and that's all there is to it confirms what spiritual teachers knew. The world bends to the frequency you radiate. So when manifestation feels uneasy, when the old habits push back, take it as proof that you are closer than ever. The path of coherence may not always feel comfortable, but it is always the path of power. And it is the only way to become a living magnet for the life you are destined to create. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and activate the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. And to anchor this truth in your life, type in the comments, "I deserve to live a financially prosperous life." 5. Stress chemistry is the main block. Stress is the greatest obstacle on the path of quantum manifestation and spiritual awakening, because cortisol and adrenaline trap the body in survival mode, forcing the mind into cause and effect thinking and recycling past patterns as if they were destiny. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And stress chemistry does exactly that. It convinces you that limitation is reality, when in truth, it is only the nervous system repeating what it knows. In modern life, under the weight of deadlines, expectations, and constant stimulation, this chemistry becomes the invisible chain that scatters your energy field, leaving you fragmented, reactive, and exhausted. Yet spirituality shows us that stress is not who we are. It is simply the body's addiction to the familiar. When stress dominates, your energy field breaks apart, scattering your attention in 1,000 directions. But coherence gathers it back into power, aligning thoughts, emotions, and heart rhythms into one frequency strong enough to crystallize intention into form. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that when you begin to declare new truths, "I am abundant, I am free," the nervous system resists because it has been trained for years to thrive on stress chemicals. The unease you feel is not failure, but the evidence of transformation. In spirituality, this is the threshold where the old identity struggles to survive even as the higher self emerges. And although it feels uncomfortable, it is the signal that manifestation is working. Just as a muscle grows through the pain of resistance, the soul grows through the discomfort of breaking old energetic patterns. Many misinterpret this stage, believing that heaviness, doubt, or resistance mean misalignment. Yet Jung reminds us there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The discomfort of quantum manifestation is not punishment. It is proof that the unconscious is dissolving and a new level of consciousness is being born. In daily life, you can meet this moment by choosing coherence over chaos. When stress rises, whether in work pressure, relationship conflict, or endless information overload, you can pause, breathe deeply, focus on gratitude, and repeat your chosen truth. This practice rewires the nervous system, teaching it to anchor in abundance and peace instead of survival and fear. Each time you return to coherence, you reclaim your scattered energy and allow your intention to solidify into reality. Stress may try to bind you to the past, but coherence frees you into the future. The very discomfort that once felt unbearable becomes the sacred signpost that you are closer than ever to the life your soul has always envisioned. This is the heart of spirituality and spiritual awakening. To rise above stress chemistry, to transform the unconscious into light, and to step boldly into the truth that your higher self is already waiting to live. 6. Practical reset. The sequence of breath, elevated emotion, and embodiment is more than a simple exercise. It is a doorway into a new way of living and manifesting. Heart-centered rhythmic breathing allows you to step out of the chaos of your thoughts and into the calm of the present moment. Each inhale and exhale resets your nervous system, loosening the grip of stress patterns that have been rehearsed for years. Breathing this way is not just about oxygen. It is about signaling to your entire being that you are safe, grounded, and ready to welcome transformation. When you pair this breath with elevated emotions such as gratitude and awe, the practice becomes even more powerful. Gratitude shifts your inner dialogue from lack to abundance, teaching your mind to notice what is already working in your life. Awe reminds you that you are part of something far greater, dissolving fear and expanding your perception of what is possible. These emotions elevate your energy, raising you into alignment with the reality you wish to create. Yet the practice only becomes complete when you move into embodiment. As Carl Jung wisely said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." Embodiment is the act of being the person you desire to become, right here and now. If you seek abundance, it is not enough to repeat the words, "I am abundant." You must teach your cells to feel abundance by standing tall with confidence, giving generously, and choosing openness over fear. When your actions, emotions, and breath align, you are no longer wishing for a future. You are living it in the present. This is where spirituality meets spiritual development, because you are actively bridging the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. Each repetition rewires your nervous system, carving new pathways of thought and behavior, much like planting seeds in fertile soil. With daily care, those seeds grow into new habits, perceptions, and realities that once seemed far away. Discomfort often arises in this process, and here lies the paradox. The discomfort is not a sign of failure, but of success. Your brain and body have been conditioned to stress, fear, and frustration. And when you step into new emotional territory, they resist. Instead of interpreting this as misalignment, see it as proof that you are disrupting old patterns. That resistance is the old self fading, making room for the new. Every time you continue the practice despite the discomfort, you declare to your subconscious, "This is who I am now." Slowly, the body learns to accept joy, freedom, and abundance as naturally as it once clung to scarcity and worry. The true lesson is that transformation comes not from occasional insights, but from small, consistent actions repeated every day. Breathing deeply when stress tempts you to react, choosing gratitude over complaint, and carrying yourself with the energy of the person you are becoming. These are not just rituals. They are declarations of faith in your own growth. Spirituality becomes tangible through these practices, and spiritual development unfold step by step until your life itself is the embodiment of the reality you once only dreamed of. 7. Patience. Incubation is progress. Patience is not waiting idly. It is the hidden progress of the soul. Just because there is no external proof does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, the lack of visible results is often the most powerful sign that something deeper is at work. Think of the seed buried in the soil. For a long time, it looks as though nothing is changing. Yet beneath the surface, roots are expanding, anchoring, and preparing for growth. In the same way, when you commit to quantum manifestation, your life may feel still, uncertain, or even heavy. But this is the rooting stage where your inner world is quietly reorganizing itself. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The very discomfort you feel is proof that the unconscious is being reshaped, that old energies are dissolving, and that new patterns are beginning to emerge. Neuroscience reveals why this process feels so uncomfortable. Dr. Joe Dispenza describes how the brain and body become addicted to familiar emotions such as stress, fear, and frustration. These emotional states create chemical loops that the nervous system has rehearsed for years. When you declare something new, I am abundant, I am free, I am healed, your system pushes back. The body clings to the old. The brain resists the unfamiliar, and this resistance feels like doubt, heaviness, or misalignment. Yet this is not failure. It is evidence of neuroplastic change. The discomfort signals that your nervous system is rewiring, that your energy field is reorganizing, and that your old identity is losing its power. Intelligent spiritual wisdom teaches us to see this stage not as a setback, but as a sacred threshold, the crossing point between who you were and who you are becoming. Jung also reminded us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. What you experience as unease is in fact the labor of awakening. To abandon the process when it feels most difficult is like digging up a seed because you have not yet seen the sprout. True spiritual wisdom asks you to endure ambiguity, to trust the unseen field of life reorganizing itself on your behalf. Patience here is not passive, it is active faith, the courage to stand still when everything inside you wants to run back to the familiar. This is the test of manifestation. Whether you can hold the vision steady when no evidence supports it. If manifestation feels uncomfortable right now, it means you are closer than you realize. The seed is alive, rooting deeply, preparing to rise. Endure the silence, allow the unseen intelligence to continue its quiet work, and refuse the temptation of digging up your progress with doubt. The lessons are clear. Patience itself is progress. Discomfort is the signal of success. Neuroplastic change takes time, and faith in the unseen is the foundation of transformation. As Gandhi said, in the midst of darkness, light persists. And so too, in the midst of your uncertainty, your new reality is already being born. 8. Make coherence a lifestyle, not an event. Make coherence not an occasional practice, but a way of life. Because when your heart, mind, and body align into one frequency, you stop chasing outcomes and instead begin to magnetize them effortlessly. Short, consistent practices of coherence, moments of mindful breathing, of calming the nervous system, of affirming your chosen truth, gradually retrain your body and brain. shifting them away from the old patterns of stress and survival into a new baseline of peace and clarity. At first, this shift may feel strange or even uncomfortable because your nervous system has rehearsed fear, doubt, and frustration for years. But that very discomfort is evidence that you are leaving behind the familiar and stepping closer to transformation. Just as a musician practices daily scales until their fingers move without thought, so too must you train your inner system until coherence becomes your natural state, not a forced effort. When you cultivate coherence as a lifestyle, manifestation no longer requires struggle. Instead of scattering your energy across worry and impatience, you broadcast a steady, unified signal that draws people, opportunities, and experiences that resonate with your soul's purpose. In modern life, many chase success, wealth, and validation as if fulfillment lies only in the next milestone. But true spirituality reveals a deeper truth. When you embody coherence, life begins to arrange itself around you. You no longer force doors to open because your aligned energy invites the right ones to swing wide on their own. This is why spiritual awakening often feels like surrender. It is not the loss of control, but the recognition that clarity of being carries more power than constant striving. Coherence, then, is the essence of spiritual wisdom. Practiced in your mornings, in stressful hours, and in quiet nights, it becomes a steady reminder that your energy is your greatest currency. Each act of alignment signals to your subconscious that a new reality is safe, and over time, your nervous system rewires itself to rest in peace instead of chaos. In this state, you no longer run after abundance, you embody it. You no longer beg for freedom, you become it. And when coherence becomes your baseline, manifestation ceases to be something you do. It becomes the natural reflection of who you are. And so, if quantum manifestation feels heavy or uncomfortable, remember, it may actually mean you're right on the edge of transformation. Growth rarely feels easy at first, but it always carries you closer to the life you're meant to live. Thank you for watching today's message on spiritual wisdom. If you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos.